Hey everybody, and Tony here with a review of Donizetti's Bolena, which was live from the Opéra Grand Avignon. The conductor was Samuel Jean, the production was done by Marie-Louise Bischofberger, the sets were done by Erich Vonda, the costumes were done by Kaspar Glarna, the lights were handled by Bertrand Coudert and Gilles Botaki, the musical assistant was Marie-Claude Papillon, and the chorus master was Aurora Marchand. Now you can also watch this entire opera on YouTube thanks to the uploader Culture Box English on the link provided on the description box below. With that said, let's get on to the review, starting off with my thoughts on the production. Overall, I found the production to have this type of angular aesthetic, as in it has that gothic mood from the use of red in the first act all the way up to the usage of dark blue in the later part of the first act, then gray in like the last few halves of the first act, and even black for Ana Bolena's execution. And while I would have loved to have a little bit more pizzazz and scenery, I thought that the gothic atmosphere served its purpose rather well. And what's so interesting about this production is that red, dark blue, and many other colors are used dominantly, especially that of red in the first act to show amorous love and fiery passions between Henry VIII and Jane Seymour, and how Anne Boleyn had her first love with Sir Richard Percy. I thought that the color usage was interesting and the lighting was quite well done from beginning to end, yet the costumes were elegant. I especially love Ana Bolena's red gown. It looked lovely on her. And speaking of Ana Bolena's costumes, when she sang the fiery cabaletta Coppia Aniqua, her ladies-in-waiting sew up a really long black veil, and Anna wears it while running around the stage singing the cabaletta, and stepping on the very last step, hits a high note, and she covers herself with that said veil as if to say that her life is now over. She's about to be executed, and she dies in the end. So overall, while I found the production to be a little bit on the matte side, I found the costumes rather elegant. And what's also interesting is that there's this little piece of choreography with Anna's, Percy's, Enrico's, and Rochefort's quartet, in which Anna is being pulled by Enrico and Hervé on one side, and Percy and Rochefort on the other side, as if to say that Anna has a choice between her duty as the Queen of England and her duty as the wife of Henry VIII, or her own personal happiness that she could have had with Sir Richard Percy and her younger brother Rochefort. I thought that looked well choreographed, and I have to give props to the singers who managed to do very, very well with working together with that. And speaking of the singers, that's what I'm going to talk about next. Starting off with our titular heroine, sung by Irina Lungu. Now, I've followed this particular soprano's career for quite some time. She specializes in a lot of bel canto roles, from the traditional roles like Lucia from Lucia della Mermur, Gilda from Rigoletto, and Violetta from La Traviata, to the light lyric roles of Adina from L'Elisir d'Amore and Norina from Don Pasquale, to the more dramatic coloratura soprano roles like Medora from Il Corsaro. And what's so noticeable about her voice is that it's a natural, full lyric soprano voice with a few coloratura soprano tendencies. My very first experience with this particular soprano was when I heard a couple of snippets of her singing the role of Medora from Verdi's Il Corsaro, an opera I have yet to see in full, whether it be live or live streamed, and I thought that she had a luscious, full-toned, lyrical, and very musical soprano voice. And at first, I was a bit skeptical, yet intrigued when she was going to sing this demanding role known as Ana Bolena. And she did really well. She maintained her full toned, beautiful sounding, and youthful lyric soprano voice, and she used it to the best of her abilities. She was able to sing certain phrases so lightly in her head, but at the same time, she was able to burst out with exclamations, and I thought she did this role really well. Granted, I would have loved to have a fuller sounding, more dramatic coloratura voice like Christina Dörtekom or Edda Moser, or someone with a little bit more agility yet still manages to be rather dramatic like Joan Sutherland, or what we have today with the likes of Elena Moshuk, Diana Damrau, Clara Kolonets, Maria Agresta, Jessica Pratt, and Albina Shagimuratova. I felt like those ladies could have also sung this particular role. Well, Elena Moshuk did that role about 3 months ago, and she was absolutely fabulous as Anna Bolena. I'm still waiting for Diana Damrau to sing this particular part alongside Clara Kolonitz, also in the titular role, and maybe even Maria Gresta or Jessica Pratt or Albina Shagamuratora. Who knows? I feel like those ladies could also bring their full-toned lyric slash dramatic coloratura soprano voices to a role like this, especially Clara Kolonitz, because she's an example of a true dramatic coloratura soprano. And while I found Irina Lungu's singing to be well done, there were some moments where I found her singing to be quite patchy, like the muddy coloratura work in Non Vas Guardo, though she did pick herself up really well in the last few acts, and I thought that her rendition of Coppia Iniqua was rather solid. And yes, her voice may not be on the level of what we've been having today with the likes of Elena Moshuk or Angela Mead or Clara Kolonitz, but she managed to stand up on her own 2 feet and did this role really well. And she was also quite meticulous as to where she had to sing the high notes and where she had to sing the low notes and where she had to phrase certain words which were so lightly sung, but at the same time, they really show how much of a fine musician Miss Lungu really is. So despite her voice not being a true dramatic coloratura soprano, I still have to give Miss Lungu a lot of credit for a job well done in terms of not only singing this role, but also giving this particular role some life and expressivity, and of course glamour, which she played very well. Singing the role of her foil, Giovanna Seymour, was Ketevan Kemoklidze, and I first heard about this mezzo by name only, as she was a rising young lyric mezzo, and nowadays she seems to try her hand out at some slightly dramatic mezzo roles like Eboli from Don Carlo, and most recently Carmen, and of course Giovanna Seymour. And from what I've been hearing in her voice, it is a pliable instrument. She has a darling stage presence. She's youthful. She's gorgeous. She has a very fine lyric mezzo voice, and she really sang her part well. Granted, there are times that her voice did sound a little bit pushed, but she had enough endurance to carry this role through. And I really love her chemistry with Irina Lungu's Anna Bolena. You could feel that they're not only like best friends or confidants, but you definitely feel that subtle power struggle that these two have. Despite them believing that this is not what their fate should be, you could definitely feel that type of tension these two have as the former queen and the future queen. So I am not going to mince words here. Ketevan Kemoklidze was absolutely fabulous as Giovanna Seymour, and I really love their duet, Sul suo capo aggravi un dio, in which both Miss Lungu and Miss Kemoklidze sang a high C at the end of their duet, which sounded superb. Then we go to Smeton, sung by the young lyric mezzo Alima Mamdi. And what a wonderful voice she has. First of all, she has a sweet toned and youthful voice. And she's quite agile on stage. She manages to burst with life and vivacity as Smeton, and she was a joy to watch. She's still quite young, but I could definitely see a great future with a lot of the bel canto roles, and maybe even roles like Rosina from Barbiere, Cenerentola, and maybe even Isolie and Isabella from Le Contori and L'Italiana in Algeri, respectively, and maybe even Arsace from Semiramide. This young woman has a great future ahead of her, and I would love to see a lot more of Miss Mamdi in the near future. Then we go to the grand Carlo Colombara, who sang a dominating Enrico Lotento. And what more can I say about Carlo Colombara? I really love the color of his voice. This gentleman is very well known in singing a lot of roles in the basso cantante repertoire, from Filippo II to Jacopo Fiesco to Don Giovanni, and even to the likes of Massimiliano from I Masnadieri and Enrico from Anna Bolena. He has a strong stage presence. I felt invigorated when he entered on stage. It was so thrilling just watching Signore Colombara embody one of his all-time signature roles, and he did it wonderfully. He has a round and rich yet seductive timbre to his voice. He has a muscular looking stage presence, and he knows how to strike terror into some of his colleagues' eyes. And he managed to embody the role of Enrico Lotento superbly. He managed to sing his lines well, and he was in great vocal shape. Ismael Hordi was a sensitive sounding Riccardo Persi. He had a very seductive timbre. He is youthful on stage, and at the same time, he is a very fine singing actor. He had not one vocal flaw, and he was an absolute charmer as Riccardo Persi. Patrick Boller was solid as Lord Rochefort, as he had a sturdy sounding basso voice, and Jeremy Dufault stole the show in the small role of Sir Hervé thanks to his lyric tenor voice. So overall, this singing was great all throughout, with everyone doing a really great job, and they portrayed their roles spectacularly, and there was not one weak link. They helped out each other wonderfully, and it was a fine vocal experience. And the conducting done by Maestro Samuel Jean was solid. However, I would have loved to have a little bit more of an emotional pull and push throughout the entire orchestra. And the orchestra itself wasn't too shabby at all. In fact, it was rather solid, though I would have loved to have a little bit more oomph in the overture and even in some other scenes as well. Though it's safe to say that he led a good orchestra, he led well, and the same thing I can say about the chorus. They were good. Yes, they may not be excellent, but they were not terrible either. They were good all around. And Maestro Jean did a solid job leading the chorus and the orchestra. The same thing I could say about Aurore Marchand. Both Madame Marchand and Monsieur Jean did a very fine job leading the chorus and orchestra respectively. So overall, even if I am not a major fan of the production, despite some really good moments here and there, I still have to give my hat off to all the singers for a job well done, and even to the conductor Samuel Jean for doing a solid job leading the orchestra. And for those of you who saw this particular production of Anna Bolena, what did you think of it? Did you really like the production? Did you feel like there was a singer who stood out to you so much? Or did you feel like there were certain areas that didn't really hold up? Comment below and let me know. Well, that's all for now. Be sure to tune in much later for my review of Donizetti's Maria Stuarda, starring Elena Moshuk and Silvia Tro Santa Fe as the two rivaling queens. So until then, have a great day, everybody.